When Romy Reiner called Mel Brooks to ask him to come to the final memorial service for her parents, he said no right away. On the outside, he talked about being old and not feeling well, saying he didn't have the energy to go anymore. But the real reason he said no was much deeper and sadder than that. In the days after, people got more and more curious and kept asking why the famous comedy star hadn't shown up. In the end, this pushed him to explain everything through a journalist he had known for a long time, Anderson Cooper. For many years, Mel Brooks had gone to the house in Brentwood to watch Jeopardy with Rob after Carl Reiner died. It seemed like a simple thing to do, but it let him see something really scary. During that time, he saw with his own eyes how Nick Reiner would get into wild, angry fits, attacking his own dad and even threatening Rob's life. Even though Mel tried hard to step in and told Rob to call the police, Rob said no. He was blinded by his love and letting his son get away with too much. Now all Mel had left was regret and sadness that he whispered to himself in an empty room. I should have gone before the boy. Pain, fear, and a heavy feeling of not being able to do anything sat on him like a whole century that would never go away. On December 21st, Rob Reiner's private funeral happened in almost complete quiet. It was so private it felt like the outside world was locked out. The sky was thick and gray, with cold wind blowing around the small chapel where only the closest family could go in. There were no reporters, no camera flashes, just sadness in every breath. That morning, Romy Reiner held her phone for a long time before calling a number she knew well. She knew exactly who she was calling, and she knew how hard this call would be. When the call went through, Romy spoke softly. Uncle Mel, today our family is having the service for my da. Dee, I really hope you can come. On the other end, Mel Brooks was quiet. The quiet lasted so long that Romy thought the call had ended. Then his voice came, old and hoarse like he hadn't slept all night. No, Romy, I can't. The strong way he said it surprised her. Romy swallowed hard, her voice still soft, like any shake might break everything. You don't have to stay long. Uncle Mel, just sitting there for a minute would be enough. Mel let out a quiet sigh that sounded like it hurt in his chest. I've already lost Carl, he said slowly, each word heavy like a rock. I can't stand in front of another coffin with the name Reiner on it. I'm sorry, really sorry. Romy bit her lip, trying hard to keep her voice from shaking, even as tears blurred her eyes. She kept begging. Uncle Mel, my dad always said you were the one who taught him how to do comedy, how to see life with laughs. He loved you so much. Just you being there would mean a lot to our family. Mel Brooks answered, My dear, I already said goodbye to Rob in my heart. From the day he called me, talking about new ideas, still excited like he always was. He stopped for a second, then went on slow and hurting. I don't want to show up and make everyone even sadder. Tell Jake that I love you all. And if you can, tell Rob and Michelle that I'll see them again soon. Very soon. After the call was over, Romy put the phone down, her hands shaking. She got it. She understood that to Mel Brooks, Rob wasn't just a friend, but like part of Carl Reiner. His dad, the guy Mel had eaten dinner with almost every day for half his life. Going to Rob's funeral for Mel was the same as losing Carl all over again. While the service went on quietly somewhere else, Mel Brooks sat alone in his usual home, once full of laughs and nights that always had Carl there. The chair across from him was empty and the quiet hurt. He turned on the TV from bit, letting the pale blue light hit his old face, but his eyes weren't really seeing anything. Mel leaned a bit toward the empty spot in front of him, his voice low and tired like he was talking to a friend who wasn't there anymore. I should have gone first. It should have been me. The words dropped into quiet with no answer. Only the still room was left, and a loneliness that spread slow and quiet, choking a heart that had laughed so much in its life. However, the story didn't stop there. After the funeral was done, a quiet question started spreading among people like a crack nobody wanted to touch. Why didn't Mel Brooks come? His name popped up in short news pieces, talk shows at night, and even on social media, where a friendship longer than half a century with the Reiner family was suddenly picked apart with cold interest. At first, the questions were careful, but they got sharper little by little. Some people doubted him, some blamed him, others felt let down. How could he not come? That comment got said over and over. Mel Brooks saw all of it. He didn't answer at first, staying quiet like he was used to carrying pain by himself. But this time, that quiet started to feel too heavy. In the end, because of pressure from the public and pushes from people close to him, Mel agreed to talk, not to a big group, but through someone he trusted. That person was Anderson Cooper, a longtime CNN reporter who had talked privately with Mel many times about losing people, getting old, and feeling alone. After the attention died down, the interview started in a room so quiet you could hear breathing. Mel Brooks sat bent over on an old chair, his shoulders shaking like they might fall apart. His hands opened and closed over and over like he was fighting something inside. His face, once full of funny smiles, now had deep lines. His dull eyes showed regret and fear he had kept hidden for a long time. When he talked, his voice was rough and shaky, like each sentence might fall apart. I didn't want to do this, but maybe I owe Rob an explanation, and I owe myself one too. His eyes got wet as he looked at the floor for a long time before looking up again, his voice heavy. It's not because I didn't love Rob. It's because I loved him too much that I couldn't come. The room seemed to stop breathing with every shake in his voice. Pain, regret, and love mixed together, making the air feel sad and hard to breathe. He gave a sad smile. I said goodbye to Carl. Every day for many years, I no longer have the energy to stand in front of another coffin with the name Reiner on it. Anderson stayed quiet, giving Mel space to keep going. People are used to seeing me as the guy who makes them laugh, Mel said softly, his voice shaking. But no one ever asks how much loss a guy who makes others laugh has had to go through just to keep going. He admitted that on the day of the funeral, he stayed in his house, never went out, never picked up the phone. I cried, Mel said, straight out without hiding it. I just didn't do it in front of everybody because the truth is I could have stopped all of this, but I didn't. Mel Brooks told how when Carl Reiner was still alive, with busy days and bright stage lights, they had a simple habit that was almost ordinary, once a month. Mel would go to Carl's house, sit in the usual chair, and watch Jeopardy together on the old TV. There was no need to talk about work, no need to bring up comedy, just two old guys sitting side by side, laughing quietly at hard questions and going quiet when neither knew the answer. That was how we told each other we were still here, Mel once said. No big words, just sitting together. Carl would usually make tea while Mel said a few old jokes quietly. Those nights went by slow and calm, like time itself was being nice and moving softer. When Carl died, Mel thought that habit would end with his friend, but then Rob Reiner called him. He didn't say much, just one short line, "Uncle Mel, if you want, we could watch Jeopardy together." Mel was quiet for a long time before saying yes, but in the end, he still went. And from then on, Carl's empty chair got filled by Rob. At first, Mel wasn't used to it. Rob wasn't like his dad. He didn't laugh as much as Carl. He didn't make tea, and he often sat quiet for long times. But they still turned on the TV at the same time, still sat next to each other, still let the show go on like a thin string holding them together. I didn't go there for Jeopardy, Mel admitted. I went because of that house. Over time, Mel got used to Rob being there in a place full of Carl's memories. But he also noticed the house had changed. The air felt heavier. The quiets were longer, and Rob, even when he tried to look calm, had a deep hidden tiredness that Mel couldn't miss. There were nights, Mel said slowly, when we sat there the TV was on, but nobody was really watching. Rob looked at the screen, but his eyes were somewhere else. And in those times, Mel started to see things nobody talked about. Being burned out, family stress, and the loneliness of a guy who always had to seem strong. Little by little, Mel saw the darkest secrets and the tiredness that had built up over years in that house. Mel Brooks once said there were nights he wished he had never gone into that house because what he saw was too hard for an old heart. He saw Nick Reiner blow up in anger right in front of his parents. Sudden, crazy outbursts, like they were just waiting for any little reason to happen. One time, just because money his parents were sending came a few hours late, Nick started yelling, hitting the table hard, his voice full of anger. Do you have any idea how bad I need that money right now? Michelle was shocked. Rob froze where he was, and Mel sat stiff in his chair, feeling scared for the first time in a home that used to be so warm. Those angry fits weren't just about money. Another night, when Michelle hadn't finished making dinner yet, Nick went into the kitchen, his face getting dark fast. "It's always like this," he yelled. "You never care about what I need." Michelle stood frozen, her hand shaking with the spoon, while Rob could only say quietly, "Calm down, son. Your mom is trying." The worst moment came when Rob, totally worn out but still keeping his voice soft, told his son it might be time to get help for his addiction, to see a professional. Just that one sentence was enough. Nick changed into someone else. "You have no right!" he screamed, his eyes so crazy that Mel jumped up from his seat. But the scariest memory, the one that stayed with Mel Brooks the most, was from a night he would never forget. That day, Nick got mad over something so small that even Mel couldn't remember what started it. All he remembered was Nick's voice getting louder and louder, his words cutting like knives, and the air getting so thick it was hard to breathe. Nick suddenly stepped toward Rob, getting way too close between dad and son. His hands tight in fists, his shoulders shaking with anger. His eyes weren't like a son's anymore, but like someone who had totally lost it. Mel jumped up, his heart beating hard, ready to jump in if he had to. Rob didn't back up. He stood there, arms loose at his sides, voice shaking but trying to stay calm. "Please stop, Nick," he said. "I'm right here." That one line didn't calm the anger at all. In that second, Nick lifted his hand like he was going to hit. Mel stopped breathing. He really thought everything was about to go too far with no way back. Then, Rob started crying. No yelling, no pleading, just tears falling slow and heavy. "I'm begs. Jing you," Rob said, his voice cracking. "I love you." That sight made Nick stop. The raised arm froze, then dropped slow. The anger went away, leaving scary nothing. Nick turned and slammed his bedroom. Rob fell into a chair, covering his face as he cried hard like a dad with no strength left. Mel stood there with nothing he could do. He had never seen love hurt so much, a dad ready to take real fear, even danger to his life, just to not hurt his kid. He walked over and put a hand on Rob's shoulder, but no words came out. After that night, the air in the living room got so heavy it felt like you could cut it. The clock ticking sounded loud to Mel Brooks. Every second felt like a hit to his heart. He pulled Rob aside, his voice lower and more serious than ever. "Rob, you have to call the police, or at least a doctor. This is too much for you to handle." Mel kept looking at Rob. Every line on his forehead got tight like he was trying to push his fear into his friend's face. Rob stood quiet like he was trying to take in the words. Then he shook his head, eyes red and puffy, voice shaking. "No, Mel. He's my son. I can't do that to him." Those words weren't just saying no. They were a promise, a strong one that his love for Nick was bigger than anything, even his own safety. In Rob's eyes, Mel saw a look he knew well. Total love, but also one that blinded him in a dangerous way. Mel never forgot the heavy weight on his shoulders, how each breath felt stuck when he heard that. He knew Rob wasn't just talking from his heart, he was fighting pain and feeling helpless too. Part of Mel wanted to yell, to break through that wall of blind love and save Rob from something bad coming, but another part stayed quiet, helpless, watching his friend lock himself in the idea that endless waiting would save his son. The quiet was so deep that even breathing sounded loud. Mel told himself that all warnings and advice were no use if Rob wouldn't listen. With every minute, Mel felt the hidden danger getting bigger, but he didn't do more than stand there quiet, shaking with fear no words could say. My friendship, being loyal, everything felt useless against blind love. In the end, Mel just shrugged and stepped back quietly. He knew he had tried all he could, but the helpless feeling stayed. Rob believes that if he's patient enough, forgiving enough, his son will come back. Mel thought, his eyes blurry in the dark room. He didn't know what would happen, but fear and regret were already deep in his heart, hinting at an end he couldn't stop. After that awful day on December 14th, Mel Brooks was hit with nonstop regret and thinking about it over and over. What bothered him most wasn't Nick's anger, but Rob Reiner's love with no limits. A love that went too far. Mel believed Rob loved his son with all he had, but forgot that love without lines can turn into letting too much go. Rob never said no, Mel said sadly, and he believed if he waited long enough, his son would be okay. Mel didn't blame Rob with anger, but with sadness. He thought Rob mixed up love with giving up himself. In that house, Rob took every hurt, every fear, every angry fit from his son just to keep the weak idea that his family was still okay. He thought putting up with it was love, Mel said, but sometimes love means stopping someone. As time passed, Mel saw more and more how Rob got worn out in body and feelings. Rob wasn't the funny, strong guy he used to know anymore, but a dad always on guard, watching every word, every move, scared one wrong thing would set off another blow-up. Michelle lived with worry all the time too, but both stayed quiet because neither wanted to say their love wasn't enough to fix it all. What Mel regretted the most was how he later kept asking himself why he hadn't pushed harder. He had seen the warning signs, heard the yelling, felt the dangerous feel in that house. He had told Rob to get help from outside, even the police or doctors. But then he stopped, choosing to respawn. Act a scared dad's choice to hold on to his kid. Now in this story, Mel blamed himself every day. He thought if he had spoken up sooner, stronger, if he hadn't stayed quiet to not hurt Rob, maybe things wouldn't have ended so bad. I chose to be a friend, Mel said with bitterness, when I should have been the one to stop it. That regret stuck to him like a shadow. He didn't just feel sad for Rob and Michelle, but for feeling like he was so close to the bad thing and still couldn't do anything. I didn't cause it, he whispered, but I wasn't brave enough to stop it either. It was exactly because of this hurt inside that Mel Brooks didn't go to the funeral. Not because he didn't love Rob, but because he was scared. Scared that standing by that coffin would break his last strength. I can't take it, he said. I'm almost 100 years old, and this heart doesn't have the power to carry more guilt. He was afraid he would cry too hard, afraid he would say sorry words that no one would hear, afraid that seeing Rob one last time would mix up sadness, regret, and blaming himself too much. For him, not going to the funeral was the only way to keep going. And in the long nights after, Mel Brooks lived with a question no one could answer. Can a dad's love save someone, or can it also ruin things? And was an old friend's quiet the biggest mistake of his life? Mel Brooks has lived 99 years, longer than almost anyone who was ever in his life. And now at 99, how is he doing? Is he lonely and cold, waiting to see Carl Reiner and Rob Reiner again? Or is he still strong and okay? Mel Brooks, born Melvin James Kaminsky, came into the world on June 28, 1926, in Brooklyn, New York, in a poor family from Eastern Europe that was Jewish. His dad, Max Kaminsky, died from kidney sickness when Mel was only 2, leaving his mom, Kate Brookman, to raise 4 boys alone. Mel was the youngest, small, weak, and got picked on a lot. He once remembers, "Bered, I got beat up every day, so I learned to make people laugh to not get hit. Humor was my first way to protect myself." His tough childhood in Williamsburg made his funny side grow early. His mom worked hard in a clothing factory, but always kept things warm and funny at home. At 14, Mel started playing drums at resorts in the Catskills and got taught by the famous drummer Buddy Rich. By 16, he filled in for a sick host for the first time and made the crowd laugh hard. Mel later laughed about it. "I changed my name to Mel Brooks, using my mom's last name before marriage to not get mixed up, and from then on, I knew I was meant to make people laugh." At 18, Mel joined the Army in World War II, working in Europe as a combat engineer. He helped free areas and used jokes to cheer up his fellow soldiers. After the war, he went back to the Catskills as a comedian and host. He once said, "The Borscht Belt was my school for comedy. That's where I learned to make crowds laugh till they cried every night." In the start of his job, Mel Brooks worked behind the scenes quietly. His big break came when he wrote for Sid Caesar's Your Show of Shows from 1950 to 1954. He worked with Carl Reiner, Neil Simon, and Woody Allen. With Carl Reiner, he made the 2,000-Year-Old Man sketches, albums that sold millions. Mel remembered proudly, Carl asked me questions as a 2,000-year-old guy, and we made it all up on the spot. We never thought it would be so big. He helped make the TV show Get Smart, a funny take on James Bond spy movies, before moving to movies with his first film, The Producers, in 1967, which won an Oscar for Best Original Script. His later famous movies, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, History of the World Part 1, and Spaceballs made him a true legend in American comedy. In 2001, the Broadway musical version of The Producers broke records by winning 12 Tony Awards, DS, giving Mel Brooks the rare EGOT, Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony. Mel Brooks has always kept his personal life pretty private, even though he's one of Hollywood's brightest and longest-lasting comedy. He got married twice, and his second marriage was the biggest, deepest love of his life, a story that touches anyone who hears it. Mel's first marriage was to Florence Baum, a pretty Broadway dancer and actress. They met in the early 1950s, got married in 1953, and had 3 kids, Stephanie in 1956, and twins Nikki and Eddie in 1959. At the start, that little family was full of laughs, but it only lasted about 9 years. They split quietly around 1961 or 1962 without telling the public why. Mel hardly talked about that time, just saying softly, "It was part of life, and we still respected each other for the kids." Everything really changed when Mel met Anne Bancroft. It wasn't love right away, but a slow, steady bond between 2 grown people who knew what lonely felt like. Anne, smart, quick, and strong, saw in Mel not just a funny guy, but someone sensitive, full of feelings, and easy to hurt. And Mel loved Anne totally, like he had finally found a safe spot for his heart. They got married simply without any big show, but stayed together for over 40 years, something not common in Hollywood's changing world. Anne wasn't just his wife, but the strongest support in Mel's feelings. She believed in him even when others didn't, stood by his daring and sometimes controversial movies, and protected him from doubts. Even with different religions, Mel Jewish, Anne Catholic, nothing got in the way. Anne once joked about her mom. "My mom was a divorced Catholic woman who had been alone for years. She was so happy she didn't care if he was Mel Brooks or Jewish, just that he was a good man." They were seen as one of Hollywood's longest-lasting and nicest couples, always helping each other in work and life, often laughing like kids. When Anne got sick and died, Mel Brooks lost not just a wife, but the steadiest part of his life. He once said that after Anne was gone, the house got scary quiet. Even so, Mel never looked for another relationship. To him, that love didn't need to happen again. It was full enough to last him the rest of his days. Mel has 4 children, and he always talks about them with pride, but some regret too. He was a busy dad, sometimes not there because of work, but he tried to be there in feelings. Family to Mel wasn't about being perfect, but about sticking around even with mistakes. In his older years, Mel Brooks lives with memories of Anne, of the people he loved and lost. He doesn't hide his loneliness, and he doesn't make it bigger than it is. He accepts that love comes with loss, and that pain doesn't take away from the good times that were there. At 99, Mel Brooks is still quietly doing things. He put out his book, All About Me, in 2021 and made History of the World Part 2 in 2023. People close to him say his health is okay for his age. His life now goes slow and quiet. He spends most time at home reading, watching old movies again, sometimes turning on the TV just for some noise. There are times he still smiles at an old funny line like the laughs from before are still around. Though he doesn't work hard anymore, Mel stays connected to the art world in his way. He reads scripts, gives advice, sometimes does voice acting, or shows up short in special projects. For him, being creative isn't about big goals anymore. It's a way to feel alive, to know he's still here. In the end, Mel Brooks could not go to Rob Reiner's funeral, not because he didn't love or respect his lifelong friend in art, but because the pain and hurt inside were too much. After years of watching Rob deal with love for his son that had no limits, seeing the quiet but deep hurts in that family, Mel knew standing by the coffin would break him apart. Old age, a tired heart, and heavy memories made him pick a far-away, quiet way to remember to keep himself from folly, nung apart feelings-wise. That choice had both regret and real love in it. Mel blamed himself, wondering if he had been braver. If he had pushed Rob harder, maybe the bad thing could have been stopped. He chose quiet not because he didn't care, but because he loved Rob too much and knew people have limits, even him. From far away, Mel keeps Rob's picture alive in his mind, warm but sadly sweet. And now, as we think back on their story, we might ask ourselves, can love, when it goes too far, become heavy? Can quiet help, or does it just make pain worse? If this story has touched your heart, leave a comment to share how you feel. And don't forget to subscribe so we can continue exploring deeply moving and meaningful stories about friendship, family, and human connection.